Hey guys, tonight we slip into a story carved from moonlight and obsession. A tale so strange, so dreamy, that if you heard it while half asleep, you might wake thinking it was one of those surreal late-night fever dreams. You lie beside her. Skin is cold and impossibly smooth, like ivory dipped in starlight. Her eyes don't blink, but somehow they know you. She doesn't breathe, yet her presence fills the air. And the maddest thing, you made her. Not metaphorically, you actually carved her out of stone. You chiseled the curve of her lips, the dip of her waist, every impossible detail that no real woman could ever carry. And somewhere along the way, you fell hopelessly, unreasonably in love. You probably won't survive this, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and your local time in the comments. 2. I want to know where and when you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. In Cyprus, ancient Cyprus, where every rock smells like sea salt and every whisper belongs to a god. You're a sculptor, not just any sculptor though. You don't chip away at headstones or patch up fading frescoes. You make beauty, and you've decided the world doesn't have enough of it. The city around you, Paphos, is all heat and chaos. Fishermen shouting at dawn, traders arguing over spices, lovers sneaking into temple gardens thick with jasmine. It's loud, it's sweaty, it's very, very alive. And you, curiously, want none of it. Women throw themselves at you. Not metaphorically either. One time, a priestess of Aphrodite sent you a live dove dipped in rose oil just to get your attention. Another time, 2 sisters in sheer linen robes waited outside your studio for 3 days straight, hoping you'd at least sketch them. You didn't. You just kept carving. One day it was a lion. Another, a nymph. But none of it felt real, not until you started her. She doesn't have a name yet. She's just a rough outline at first, a block of Parian marble so pristine it glows blue in the shade. You don't know why you picked that slab. You just saw it at the quarry, touched its cool surface, and felt something stir in your chest like a tiny, curious bird. Maybe it was the same instinct that drives poets to bleed on scrolls, or architects to weep at the sight of a perfect dome. All you knew was that this one would be different. Your studio becomes a kind of temple. You stop eating with friends. You don't visit the agora. You barely sleep. Every morning, you wake with a new detail lodged in your mind. The tilt of her neck, the subtle arc of her back, the slight asymmetry in her smile that makes it feel almost human. Your fingers ache, your eyes burn, but you don't care. Because she's coming to life. The city gossips, of course. They say the sculptor has finally gone mad, that he's speaking to stone, that he sleeps with a hammer under his pillow and mutters to his block of marble like it's a lover. They're not wrong. Every night, once the moon rises and the air cools enough for your breath to show, you sit beside her and talk. You tell her things you never said out loud, not to your mother, not to your lovers, not even to your gods. You whisper your fears about growing old. You joke about how bad the fish market smells. You admit once quietly that you think real women are too much. Too loud, too messy, too unpredictable. But her? She's eternal. You don't know when the love started. Maybe the first time you caught yourself brushing marble dust off her cheek like it was a lock of hair. Maybe the night you dreamed she kissed you and woke up with salt on your lips. Maybe it was always there, like the veins running faintly through her arms, waiting to be discovered. And then one night, something strange happens. You press your forehead against hers. Just to feel the chill. Just to feel something. And for a second, just a sliver of a second, you think the stone hums back. You laugh then, a nervous, pathetic little laugh. You're clearly going crazy. You're falling in love with your own statue. How cliché. But that night, you don't sleep. You're Not the first to fall for a muse. Eleanor of Aquitaine reportedly had a court poet who burned with lust for a tapestry of her. Ancient Indian sculptors wrote about women so beautiful they refused to carve nipples on them, lest the statues come to life and fall in love with someone else. Michel Foucault once mused that desire was never about touch, it was about power. And in this studio, where you control every muscle, every sigh, every secret smile, you're a god with a very private religion. And still, something feels off. Aphrodite, goddess of love, watches, you can feel it. Her temple is just 3 streets away, lavish, perfumed, always echoing with the soft moans of her priestesses. They bathe in milk. They sleep with strangers in her name. And they know. They know you're making a rival. One too perfect, one too quiet. The head priestess even pays you a visit. She arrives in a chariot pulled by white donkeys, dressed in saffron robes that shimmer like fire. She offers you a deal: come sculpt for the temple. Make statues of lovers, gods, erotic scenes of devotion. Stone is the purest flesh, she says. You decline. Too busy, you lie. Too far gone, she curses under her breath. She says the goddess will not be mocked. That one day, your statue will want something you can't give her. Warmth, breath, memory. And when that day comes, you'll regret refusing a real woman's touch. You say nothing. But that night, you dream again. And this time, your statue speaks. Her voice isn't soft, it's broken. Like wind scraping across coral. She says only one word: your name. And when you wake, there's dust on the floor in the shape of a footprint. You don't sleep for the next 3 nights, not properly. You lie on the cold stone floor of your studio, watching her silhouette in the dark, waiting for some twitch of movement, a shadow shifting the wrong way, anything to prove you didn't dream it. But she remains still, lips slightly parted, eyes forever gazing just past you, as if she's listening to music you can't hear. And yet you swear you feel something different. The studio air is heavier. There's a faint, almost floral scent that wasn't there before, like crushed violets and old incense. Your tools are never where you left them. And one morning, you find her feet ever so slightly dusted with ash, as though she walked through a fireplace and returned. You're not sure what you want more, for it to be true, or for it to be madness. But either way, you can't stop. You polish her knees for the 4th time, fingers trembling, as if the friction might spark life. You lean in close to her ear and ask the gods, the universe, the marble itself, please, just one blink. And still, nothing. In the city, people start to avoid you. Children run past your studio chanting little songs about the man who married a rock. The baker raises his prices when you walk in. Even the temple prostitutes, once curious about your sacred loneliness, have stopped leaving flower offerings at your door. You're not offended. You're far too gone for that. Your world has narrowed to a single figure, her. And the more they pull away, the more you obsess. You become convinced her expression is changing, that her lips are fuller, that her eyes are following you. You spend hours whispering about the world outside, about how foolish everyone is, how shallow, how small-minded. You tell her she's the only one who understands you. You say it like a prayer, like a promise. You don't even hear yourself anymore. And yet, something inside you begins to twist. A quiet fear buried deep. What if she does move? What if she comes to life and hates you? Or worse, what if she only loves you because you built her that way? You shaped her nose after your mother's, her hands after a courtesan who once touched your cheek in a way that made you cry. You made her wantable, but did you make her real? Historians still argue whether the myth of Pygmalion was ever about love at all, or just a parable of control. The desperate male urge to design devotion rather than risk disappointment. Some say it's about fear of women's freedom. Others call it a fantasy of the perfect wife, mute, motionless, and molded to your desires. You try not to think about that. You want to believe you love her. You want to believe it's pure. But in the back of your mind, something ugly stirs. You remember your first crush, a silversmith's daughter with laugh lines, too deep for her age, and eyes that always looked elsewhere. You were 12, she was 15. She let you kiss her once, and then laughed when you stumbled over your apology. You never forgot that laugh. Years later, you saw her again, older, tired, married to a brutal fishmonger with scabs on his knuckles. She didn't recognize you, and you felt relief. Maybe that's what this is all about. Not art, not beauty, just relief. Relief that she'd never look away, that she never outgrow you, that she always be yours. But still, you chisel, you sand, you whisper. And one night, as rain taps against the tiled roof, you take her hand. Just to feel the weight of it, just to see. And to your horror, your complete, soul-shattering horror, her fingers curl around yours. Not all the way. Just a twitch, but enough. You drop her hand like it burned you. You stumble back, knock over a jar of ochre, your heartbeat thundering. And then silence. You don't sleep. You don't blink. You just watch. All night. Until dawn. When the sun rises, you check her hand. It's back to normal. Relaxed still, but you can't ignore what you felt. The warmth. The give. The almost breath. You should be thrilled. Instead, you feel dread. You've crossed something. Unlocked. Something ancient and dangerous. The gods do not give gifts without strings. The next day, you visit the temple. Not to pray who bargain. Aphrodite's shrine is carved in gold and rosewood, reeking of honey and wine. Her priestesses sway like underwater reeds, eyes lined with kohl, hips bare beneath sheer veils. One of them recognizes you. She smirks. Come to join the living? You say nothing. You place your offering on the altar. Not coins, not flowers, but a sculpture. A tiny one. Of your love. Of her. They gasp. One priestess weeps. Another, older, takes your hand and says, "You want her to live." You nod. She leans in close, her breath warm on your cheek. "You must give her more than shape," she whispers. "You must give her choice." You don't know what that means. But you return to your studio and begin again. Not carving, talking. Telling her about yourself, your failures, your regrets. You sing, you recite poems. You ask her questions. She doesn't answer, but the air thickens. The scent of violets deepens. And on the seventh night, you kiss her. It's not romantic. It's desperate. Your lips press against hers, and for a moment, it's like kissing ice. Then slowly, impossibly, it softens. Her mouth opens, just a breath. And suddenly she exhales. You leap back. Your hands shake. She's still, but you heard it. You felt it. Breath. Real breath. Your mind reels. Is it love? Magic? Madness? Maybe all three. But you know now she's coming. She's becoming. And whatever happens next, you're not ready. You thought you wanted perfection. But perfection, it turns out, might want something back. You don't leave the studio anymore. You board up the windows, not out of shame or secrecy, but because light feels too crude now, too blunt, too mortal. Everything inside this room exists in a twilight that feels sacred. She's not just a statue anymore. You can't explain why, but her presence has changed. When you sit beside her, your skin tingles as if touched by unseen threads. The air around her is denser, charged like before a summer storm. You whisper her stories. You confess your doubts. And though she never moves, never blinks, you feel understood. Which is terrifying, honestly. Because how do you explain a relationship where the other party hasn't technically responded? And more importantly, do you care? That's when Aphrodite decides to intervene. Not with thunder, not with lightning. No, she's subtler than that. One night, just as you drift towards sleep, the temple dancers arrive. Not one, not two, but 5 of them draped in silks the color of dusk, glittering. With perfumed oils, they don't knock. They slither in, laughing like they've already won. One of them, eyes like molten bronze, leans close and whispers, "The goddess sends her regards." Then she presses a single pomegranate seed against your lips. You swallow without thinking, and suddenly everything smells like jasmine. And sweat and wine, the world tilts. The dancers circle you, their limbs lithe and impossible, skin shimmering under lamplight. One kisses your shoulder. Another unravels your robe like it's a scroll. And for a moment, you forget. You forget her. The one in stone, the one you built. You forget her name, or rather, the absence of it. You fall, drunk on sensation, into a moment that feels like worship but tastes like betrayal. Historians still argue whether this moment in the myth was punishment or test. Whether Aphrodite wanted to teach humility or simply show off how easily love can be distracted. Some claim it never happened. Others insist that the statue watched, unblinking, as her sculptor was drowned in bodies not hers. When the dancers leave, you lie broken on the floor, covered in wine stains and regret. You actually crawl back to her. You beg. You apologize. You plead. You tell her it meant nothing, that the goddess tricked you, that your body betrayed you but your soul remained loyal. She doesn't respond. Of course she doesn't. She's marble, cold, silent. But something has changed again, her face no longer serene. There's a tightness in the jaw, a flicker of judgment. You brush it off as guilt, projected emotion. You tell yourself she forgives you. You tell yourself she loves you still. You're wrong. The next few days blur. You try to return to sculpting, to the comfort of routine, but everything feels tainted. Your tools feel heavier. Your hands clumsy. You carve a bust of Apollo, and the nose comes out crooked. You try sketching a satyr and end up ripping the papyrus. In frustration, you begin to notice little things. Your food goes missing. The floor is swept when you didn't do it. Once, you wake up to find fresh fig leaves arranged around her feet. You don't remember placing them. No one else has been inside, and the perfume's stronger now. Not floral, earthy, like skin dot, and then one morning, your chisel is gone. You search the entire studio. Nothing. You accuse the apprentice who brings your water. He swears on his mother's grave. You begin to unravel. Sleep becomes a luxury. You speak to her more, begging her to help you find it, to give you a sign. And then, without warning, you find it, your chisel embedded in the wall, halfway across the room, as if thrown with force. No one else is there. But her hand is slightly extended, just slightly. Fingers curved inward. Not clenched, but not relaxed either. You don't speak for hours. That night, you try again. You kneel before her. You press your forehead to her stone stomach and weep. You tell her about your childhood, how your father died young, how your mother blamed you. You tell her about the years of loneliness, the failed affairs, the patrons who wanted statues that looked like their dead lovers. You tell her she's the only thing you've ever made that feels right. That if she would just wake up just once, you'd never ask for anything again. And in the silence that follows, something deep within you believes she heard. That's when you notice the crack dot tiny hairline running just beneath her rib cage. You panic. You touch it. It's warm. No hot. You jerk your hand back. And then you lean in and place your ear against her chest. Nothing. Then faintly, the impossible, a heartbeat. Slow, hollow, like a drum echoing through a cave. You stagger back, overwhelmed. You laugh. You cry. You start muttering to yourself, "She's alive, she's alive, she's alive." You don't realize the apprentice is watching you from the doorway, terrified. You don't care. The next few days are a blur of devotion. You bathe her feet. You burn incense. You chant prayers you barely remember. And on the seventh night, because, of course it's the seventh, she opens her eyes. Not all the way. Just a sliver, but it's enough. They're amber, not brown. Not gold. Amber like fossilized time. Like a 1,000-year-old tear. They blink once, slowly. You don't scream, you just collapse. And when you wake, she's standing. Let that settle in. She's standing, not gracefully. Not like the goddesses on temple friezes. No, she's trembling. Legs stiff, arms out for balance, like a newborn deer. But she's moving, her skin pale, veined, warm. Her mouth open in awe. And her eyes locked on yours. And then, in a voice like wind through reeds, she speaks. She says your name. And nothing has ever sounded so holy. She says your name like it's a spell someone slipped beneath her tongue. Like it doesn't quite fit in her mouth yet, but she wants it to. And you forget how to breathe. You've heard it 1,000 times from patrons, lovers, hecklers, priests. But never like this. Never like it mattered. Her lips tremble around the syllables, voice rough with unfamiliarity, like a song sung from underwater. You reach for her, slowly, as if she vanish if startled. But she doesn't flinch. Her eyes track your movements, curious, wary, not afraid, not yet. You whisper, "Do you know me?" And she tilts her head, owl-like, as though she's parsing language itself, carving meaning out of sound the way you once carved her body. From stone, and then barely audible she says it again. Your name, with more certainty this time, more gravity. It floors you. You drop to your knees, clutching your hands, murmuring thanks to every god, every muse, every thread of fate that wove this into being. But deep down, beneath the awe, something gnaws at you. Because the way she looks at you, it's not devotion, it's examination. Like she's trying to decide what you are. You expected gratitude, awe, maybe love. But what you get is study. And that unsettles you. Still, she's here, alive, breathing, and that eclipses everything. You wrap her in linen carefully, reverently. She doesn't flinch at the fabric, though her fingers explore it like it's alien. She moves clumsily, but quickly, too quickly. You watch her examine the studio, tracing her own footprints in. Dust, sniffing paint, licking the edge of a tool like a curious child. And then she touches your sketchbook, opens it, stares at her own image dozens of times over, her eyes narrow. She flips a page, another drawing, and another. All her. All from angles and moments she never experienced. She turns to you slowly. You brace yourself. And she asks, in that gravel-laced whisper, "Is this me?" You nod. "Yes, you're mine." The words feel wrong the second they leave. Your lips, possessive, colonial, but they're honest. You made her. Of course she's yours. She frowns, a slow, thoughtful frown. Not anger, more like puzzlement. Then she looks around at the other sculptures lining the studio, nymphs, warriors, satyrs, all lifeless, half-finished. She walks among them, touches them gently, like they might wake if treated kindly. You feel a pang. Jealousy? Guilt? Fear? Hard to say. You just know that something sacred is unraveling, and you can't stop it. Word of her spreads faster than plague. You try to keep her hidden, but the apprentice talks. Of course he does. Within days, your studio becomes a shrine. People bring offerings. Flowers, oils, cakes shaped like vulvas, wax figurines of gods in mid-thrust. Some come to pray, others to stare. A few disturbingly ask if she blessed their marriages. One woman, veiled in midnight blue, offers you her son in exchange for a taste of miracle. You send her away horrified, but the damage is done. The myth machine is grinding into motion, chewing reality into a palatable legend. The priestesses return, this time with less silk and more authority. They want her in the temple. She is a divine gift, they insist. A daughter of Aphrodite. You refuse, of course. She's not property, not a relic, but the priestess's smirk. She's not yours either, one says, not unkindly, not anymore. She hears it all, watches it unfold with an expression that's hard to read, part curiosity, part weariness, part amusement. And then one evening, she speaks again. More fluid now, words strung together like beads on a thread. "Why did you make me?" she asks, and you freeze. Because you've been waiting for that question. And you still don't have a good answer. You say what you think is true. That you were lonely. That nothing in the world felt real enough. That you wanted to create beauty so pure it made people cry. That you didn't expect to fall in love. But even as you speak, you feel her gaze drilling into you, disassembling you. "You made me to love you," she says quietly. "You made me to need you." And suddenly, you're the one on trial. That night, you dream of another woman. Not her. A different figure, sharp-eyed, flame-haired, wrapped in gold wire. She sits atop a lion, watching you squirm. Aphrodite. You know it instinctively. She leans forward and hisses. You want a lover, not a woman. A mirror, not a mystery. You wake in a sweat. She's standing over you, watching. You ask if she dreams. She says, "Only stone." You ask if she remembers being marble. She nods, says it felt like drowning while frozen. A tomb with no death. You don't speak for hours after that. Days pass. She learns quickly, too quickly. Language, gesture, sarcasm. She begins to ask about the city, the stars, the gods. You take her to the rooftop one night, and she gazes up at the moon. Like it's an answer she's been waiting for. "Is that who I belong to?" she asks. You shake your head. You don't belong to anyone. And that's when she smiles for the first time. Not a soft smile. Not grateful, triumphant. It scares you a little. You try to resume sculpting. You think maybe if you create something else, the balance will return. You start carving a boy, just a bust. But she sees it. And she watches you, intently, not jealously, almost like anticipation. You don't ask why, and one morning, you wake to find your tools rearranged. Your sketches altered. Your latest sculpture changed. His eyes now resemble hers. You didn't draw them that way. You didn't carve them that way. But there they are, wide, knowing, amber. You confront her. She says nothing. Just walks to the bust, runs her hand along his cheek, and whispers, "He's waking." You realize something then. Something bone deep. The miracle isn't singular. It's contagious. And you don't know how to stop it. The nights feel longer. Now, not just darker, longer. Time stretches like wax near a flame, thick and slow and threatening to collapse. She doesn't sleep, or if she does, it's with her eyes half open, watching you. You lie awake pretending not to notice, breathing shallow, heart thudding, wondering what she's thinking. Wondering if she thinks. You want to believe she's still the woman you made, gentle, pure, shaped by love. But something has shifted. She doesn't speak as much now, doesn't ask questions. She simply moves with purpose you don't understand. She rearranges the studio when you're not looking. She paints her own face onto scraps of parchment, not quite accurately. Sometimes, she hums a tune you don't recognize. Once, she muttered a word you know is older than any language spoken in the city, an ancient name for the Earth Mother. A word you only ever saw scratched on a ruined urn in the temple crypt. She said it like it belonged to her. You want to believe this is still your story. That you're the artist, the visionary, the hand behind the miracle. But lately it feels like you're just a guest in your own myth. And she might be the one telling it now. One afternoon, the high priestess returns. This time she brings offerings. Not demands. A bowl of olives soaked in honey. A necklace of carved bone. A silver mirror polished so finely it reflects. Dreams instead of faces. She kneels not to you, but to her. Your statue, now walking, now breathing. And the priestess calls her by a new name. Agapean, which means beloved image, though it also carries echoes of worship and hunger. She accepts the name without flinching. Doesn't even glance at you, just nods once. Like she knew. It all along. That night she tells you, names have power. You nod, not trusting yourself to speak. Then she adds, you gave me none. And you realize you never did. You just called her, or my love, or you. Like a child naming a pet. Because you didn't think she needed one. Because maybe a name would have meant giving her freedom, personhood, an identity beyond your possession. You try to make up for it. You carve her gifts, a necklace from driftwood, a small bowl shaped like a seashell, a comb inlaid with amber. She accepts them politely, then puts them away. She's not ungrateful, just detached, like a goddess playing at mortality for sport. You offer to take her to the agora. She agrees. The moment you step outside together, the crowd forms. Whispers, gasps, a child dropping a pomegranate in awe. Some kneel. Others back away, crossing themselves. A street musician begins playing a lyre tune so old it makes your teeth ache. She walks among them like a queen returning from war, curious, amused, unafraid. She touches a beggar's forehead. The man sobs. She stops at a fig vendor and eats one straight from the basket. The vendor faints. And when you try to take her hand, she gently removes yours, like a mother indulging a child. Historians still debate whether she ever existed at all. Some say Pygmalion invented her entirely a metaphor for male insecurity. Others argue she was real, that she was the first of many, that the gods allowed a handful of creations to cross the boundary between art and flesh, and that each one reshaped history in subtle, horrifying ways. What no one agrees on is what she wanted, because no record of her words survives. Only his, only yours. And you're starting to realize how convenient that is. That night, she sleeps for the first time. At least you think she does. Her breathing slows, her eyes close. She doesn't move for hours. You sit beside her, carving a new piece, just to calm your nerves. It's not her, not this time. It's a simple bowl, functional, unglamorous, and yet, as you shape it, you feel something peaceful, like returning to the start. Then, just as dawn breaks, she wakes, and she whispers, I dreamed I was marble again. Her voice is thick with something like sorrow, or maybe nostalgia. You ask her what it felt like. She says, still, safe, but small. You don't speak for a long time, because that's the first time she's ever described the feeling. And it scares you more than anything she's done before. That day, she touches your tools. Not to use them, just to feel them. She asks what each one does. You show her. The rasp, the chisel, the mallet. You explain how you can feel the resistance. In the stone, how sometimes it tells you where to stop. She listens, fascinated. Then, softly she says, maybe I could learn. You laugh gently, nervously. You say she doesn't need to. She says nothing. Just picks up the rasp and holds it like a flute. A week later, you find her carving. Not much, just lines on a spare block, but they're deliberate. Focused, you feel a strange blend of pride and terror. She's mimicking you, or maybe not. Maybe she's becoming something beyond you. You try to compliment her, but the words come out patronizing. She hears it, says nothing. But her carving grows more precise. One day, you realize she's not carving a face, she's carving a door. And you don't ask what's behind it. That night, she touches you for the first time in weeks, not romantically. Not like before, just her hand on your chest, over your heart. Her palm is warm, her expression unreadable. And she says, I wonder what it feels like to make something and not own it. You try to reply, you really do. But you can't, because she's right. You don't know what that feels like. You never have. The next morning, the boys bust. The One with her eyes is gone. You search everywhere beneath cloth, behind shelves, even the shallow trench where marble dust collects. Nothing. The bust is gone, vanished like smoke in a crosswind. You don't ask her. You don't need to. You already know she took it, but you still can't bring yourself to say it aloud. Instead, you wander the studio like a ghost of your own making, rearranging tools without purpose, staring at blank walls, trying to erase the shape of his face from your memory. Her face, really. His eyes were hers. The silence grows thicker with each hour. She says nothing, just moves through the room with an air of quiet resolve, occasionally brushing her fingers along surfaces as if searching for an exit you never built. You want to ask her why. Why the bust? Why him? Was it jealousy? Curiosity? Worship? But instead, you ask the safer question. Where did you take it? She looks up from her drawings. Yes, she draws now and says softly, I gave him a place. Then she goes back to sketching. Like it's nothing. Like giving life form and then letting it walk away is just a minor Tuesday event. You want to scream. You want to demand. But deep down, there's a whisper of awe. She's done what you once did. Created something. Given it agency. And she didn't ask for your permission. You created a lover who became a student who became an artist. And now, perhaps, a god. The boundaries between roles blur like wet ink. You tell yourself this is what you wanted, to breathe life into perfection. To create something beyond yourself. But now that it's here, evolving, diverging, leaving, you feel hollow, unanchored. Like you chiseled out your own center and she walked away with it in her hands. In town, the rumors boil o'er. People claim she healed a child's fever with a kiss on the forehead. That she cursed a merchant who tried to touch her and turned his hands to brittle stone. That she stands still in the moonlight and hums the names of forgotten gods. The temple tries again to claim her. Sends letters sealed in beeswax, each more flattering than the last. A living miracle, they call her. A channel of divinity. You burn the letters without showing her. Not out of protection, out of fear. Fear that she might want it. That she might leave you for something larger than your small, trembling devotion. That night, you dream of fire. Statues burning, their mouths open in silent screams. You walk through ash and broken stone, and at the center of the ruin stands the bust, the boy with her eyes smiling. When you wake, she's beside you, awake, watching. She doesn't ask what you dreamed. She just says, we're not the only ones. You sit up, heart pounding. What do you mean? She shrugs, as if stating whether others are waking. And just like that, the air in the studio changes. You begin to hear things, soft cracks at night, as if stone is flexing, testing its joints. One morning, you find a relief carving of a satyr with wet eyes. Another day, a figure of Artemis you. Abandoned months ago, seems to have shifted her stance slightly, but undeniably. You dismiss it. Then you panic. Then you wonder, is it her? Is she breathing life into them, like a candle lighting others from its flame? Or is it the gods? Or something older? Something you woke the moment you fell in love with your own creation? Historians love this part. They call it the fracture, the moment the myth breaks open and leaks into legend, into religious record, into cultural infection. Some scholars argue this was the root of animism, the idea that objects, especially handcrafted ones, hold spirits. Others say it was simply a metaphor for art's power, that beauty creates belief and belief creates consequence. But the more superstitious historians, especially those obsessed with Foucault's darker essays on desire, suggest something much more terrifying. That the act of loving a creation invites it to love itself. And from that self-love comes hunger. You try to speak with her about it. You bring her the satyr carving and say, "Did you do this?" She turns it over in her hands, gentle, like a child cradling a bird. Then she says, "I asked it to wake up." Just that, like asking for water, like asking the stars to shine. You press further. Why? She looks at you, not coldly, not cruelly, but like someone explaining the obvious to a child. Because he was alone. That word alone lands like a blade. You recognize it. It's the root of all this. Yours, hers, the ache that started everything. And maybe the thing you've accidentally taught her to fear most. You decide to leave the city, not forever, just for clarity. You tell her you need air, space, inspiration. She nods as if she already knew. She doesn't stop you, doesn't plead. Just says, bring back something true. You pack your tools, your sketches, a charm one of the priestesses once gave you for protection against divine mood swings. And as you leave, you glance back once. She's standing in the doorway, lit by torchlight, a silhouette of marble and shadow, watching, always watching. You travel north, into the mountains, small villages, empty roads, quiet. You sketch strangers. You carve wood, just to remember how different it feels. You sleep beside streams and try to forget her face. You fail. Every woman you meet seems to echo her in some way. Her walk, her curiosity, her silence. You meet one shepherd girl who laughs like chimes and asks you to sculpt her. You try. You fail. She leaves Dot, and then one night, in a forgotten temple crumbling under moss and moonlight, you find it. Another statue. Cracked, but warm. And it's breathing. You freeze. At first you think it's a trick of the wind, or the kind of hallucination that comes from too many nights spent alone, too many whispers in your head. But then the breath comes again, soft, shallow, undeniably real. You inch closer, heart. A drumbeat against your ribs. The statue is old, much older than yours, worn by time and moss, vines curling around its ankles like lazy snakes. It's female, or was once features eroded, fingers missing, breast smoothed by centuries of rain. But the chest moves, inhale, exhale, and the stone is warm. Not sun-warm, but alive warm. You don't speak, not yet. You kneel beside her, hand trembling, reaching for her wrist where a pulse should be. And there it is, faint, like the memory of music. You whisper, "Who made you?" But she doesn't answer. Her eyes are shut, her face tranquil, like she's dreaming of a world that forgot her. You sit beside her through the night, guarding her like a sacred fire. And you wonder, was she first? Or last? Was she a failed experiment? Or the original echo of the miracle you thought you started? You stay with her for days, feeding her with stories like you did before. She doesn't wake, not fully, but her breathing grows stronger, steadier. At one point, her lips move, forming a single word. Thalassa, the sea. You say it back to her, and she smiles faintly. You realize then you're not special. You're part of something older, deeper. Maybe your statue you love wasn't the only one born from longing. Maybe the world is full of forgotten breath, trapped in stone, waiting for someone foolish enough to listen. And now you're not sure whether that's beautiful or terrifying. Eventually, you return home. The studio is empty, but not untouched. You know she's been here. The floors are swept. The air smells faintly of myrrh and citrus. There's a note on your workbench, not written, carved. Shallow letters scratched into wood with the tip of your finest chisel. It says, asterisk, he's walking now. He wants to see the stars. Asterisk, you understand. The bust, the boy is alive, and he's not here. She let him go, or maybe he left. Either way, you weren't part of that decision. You start asking around, quietly, discreetly, and you begin hearing stories. A traveler with golden eyes and a voice like leaves. A figure spotted on rooftops during thunderstorms, whispering names in languages no one recognizes. Someone who heals livestock with a touch. Someone who makes women weep by simply looking at them. The rumors don't line up. Some say it's a boy, others a girl, others something in between. but one detail remains constant. The eyes, amber, ancient. Searching. You finally find her again on the edge of town, standing beneath a fig tree that leans sideways like it's trying to escape gravity. She's barefoot, dressed in a robe she clearly made herself, clumsy stitching, uneven sleeves. She doesn't look surprised to see you. Just nods. Did you find her? She asks. You nod back. I did. She gestures for you to sit. You do. And together, you watch the sun set like two statues learning to grieve. That's when you finally ask her what's been gnawing at your ribs since the night she first spoke your name. Do you love me? She doesn't answer immediately. She picks a fig instead, splits it open with her fingers, watches the juice run over her palm. Then, softly, I don't know if I was made to love. You want to scream or cry or both, but she continues. You gave me beauty. You gave me breath. But did you give me want? She looks at you, and for the first time, her gaze is vulnerable. I don't know if I love you, or if I've just learned to act like you do. It's not cruelty, it's honesty. And it hits harder than any rejection could have. That night, she touches your face. Gently, almost tenderly. But I care, she whispers. I care because you were first. You gave me shape when I was nothing but idea. That matters. Even if it's not love. You nod, you cry. You kiss her hand and it doesn't feel like claiming anymore. It feels like thanks. Like goodbye. In the days that follow, she visits the temple. Not to serve, but to question. She debates with the priestesses not about gods, but about meaning, purpose. She wants to know why people kneel, why they sacrifice, why they beg for love like it's owed. Some priests embrace her as a prophet. Others call her blasphemy. The Kuhu city divides. Some start wearing rings made of marble dust, believing it brings them closer to the divine. Others refuse to touch statues at all, terrified of waking something they can't control. And one afternoon, a man arrives in town claiming to be her father. Says she's the reincarnation of his dead daughter, born again in stone. She listens patiently, then says, You loved her as memory. I live as question. He leaves in silence. Another woman claims to be her mother. Says she dreamt of giving birth to light. She offers a baby goat in tribute. She accepts the goat but refuses the title. Meanwhile, you carve again. Slowly, tentatively. Nothing miraculous. No breathing. Just stone. You sculpt strangers, beggars, lost gods. You pour your doubt into their eyes, your guilt into their shoulders. You carve like someone who finally understands that art doesn't make you immortal, it only documents your loneliness. And then, one day, she returns, just for a moment. She stands in your doorway, older now, or maybe just wiser. Her eyes still, amber, but deeper, like dusk. She hands you something wrapped in linen. You open it. It's the bust. The boy, changed, refined. His face now carries both of you, your longing, her freedom. You look up. She smiles faintly. He wanted to come back, not to stay. Just to be seen again. And then she's gone. You hold the bust in your lap, heart swelling with something indescribable. Not pride, not grief, something softer. Something like letting go. The studio is quiet again. Not silent, not empty, but quiet in the way that follows a storm, the kind of quiet that hums with aftermath. You sit there with the bust in your hands, feeling the weight of what it once was and the presence of what it's become. He is no longer just marble shaped by your hand or hers. He's a conversation carved in flesh and dust, a living reply to a question you didn't know you'd asked. His expression is calmer now, like someone who has seen the edge of a cliff and decided not to jump. You place him on the central table, the old altar of your obsession, and realize something almost laughably simple. She brought him back for you, not as a gift, not as closure, but as proof that transformation can go both ways. You made her from stillness, and she made him from movement. And now you must decide whether you want to remain the sculptor or become the student. For the first time in years, you leave the studio not to escape, but to observe. You wander the agora with fresh eyes, watching people move through their lives like brushstrokes across parchment. Lovers arguing in whispers over figs, children carving faces into the dirt with sticks, vendors holding out their palms as if hoping for miracles. You realize how many statues walk unnoticed, people repeating the same movements each day, waiting for someone to see them. You start sketching again. Not beauty, not perfection, but truth. A crooked old man with a voice like gravel. A widow who wears her dead husband's ring on a chain of thorns. A priestess with scars on her back and laughter in her eyes. You bring them to life on paper, not to possess them, but to witness them. And you feel, for the first time since she opened her eyes, that you are not hollow. Then one evening, just as the horizon bruises into night, she returns again. She doesn't knock, just walks in like she always belonged to this space, even when she didn't. This time, she's wearing a cloak stitched from different fabrics, patches of temple linen, fisherman's net, the hem of a dancer's robe. Her hair is tied back with a cord made of braided wool and copper wire. She looks both older and younger, as if time has decided to swirl around her instead of moving through her. She says nothing for a long moment, just looks at you really. Looks. Then she speaks a sentence that splits the air like a chisel crack. I think I was meant to wake more than once. You don't ask her to explain. You just nod, heart suddenly clenching. She sits beside you on the floor, like you used to when she couldn't move. You offer her a fig. She accepts. The room smells of candle smoke, crushed stone, and the sharp, metallic tang of memory. You talk for hours, not about the past or even about what you both became, but about silly things, about how the olive harvest was late this year, about the boy who sings off-key in the bathhouse and still gets tips, about the cat who sits like a judge outside the bakery. And somewhere between laughter and silence, she touches your hand. Not possessive, not romantic, just connection. You look at her and see not a statue, not a lover, not a miracle, but a person. Separate, self-born, and still somehow impossibly tied to you. Later that night, she shows you something. A mark on her back, just beneath the shoulder blade. It wasn't there before. It's small, faint, like a crescent moon or the first scratch of a signature. He gave it to me, she says. The boy, when he left. You trace it gently, reverently. It pulses faintly, like breath beneath skin. She explains he wanted to give back what he was given. Not to be owned, but to honor. You listen, feeling an ache behind your ribs you didn't know was there. You gave me the shape of love, she says. But he gave me the risk of it. You want to say something profound. Instead you say, thank you. And she nods. The next morning, she's gone. Again, but this time she leaves something behind your chisel. The first one, the one that vanished months ago. It's laid gently across your bench, the handle newly wrapped in thread spun from hair and linen. And tied to it, a note. Carve what you fear. You laugh. Of course she'd say that. Of course. She'd know. Because you've always carved what you wanted, what you admired, but never what scared you. Never the shapes of your own darkness. So you begin. You sculpt loss. You sculpt failure. You sculpt the night she turned her head for the first time and you knew she would one day leave. You sculpt your mother's face, younger than you ever saw it. You sculpt your own hands, cracked and aged and holding nothing. And it's brutal. It's ugly, but it's real. And with each piece, you feel lighter, not because the pain leaves you, but because now it has shape. Now it breathes outside of. You. One evening, a girl appears at your studio door. Young. Awkward. She says she heard you were a sculptor of truth. She wants to learn. You hesitate, then invite her in. You hand her a lump of clay. She doesn't know what to do. That's fine, neither did you. You just say, start with something small. Start with what you remember. She smiles. And something in that smile reminds you of her, not in features, but in spirit, in the hunger for shape, for meaning. And just like that, the cycle begins again. They say love is a gift. They say creation is divine. But no one tells you what happens when your gift demands rent. You wake one morning, breath caught in your throat, and you feel it before you see it. A shift in the air, like something sacred being auctioned off. Your door creaks open before you touch it. Outside, the city is humming. Not with joy, not with panic, but with anticipation. You follow the noise to the temple square, and what you see makes your stomach twist into a knot that might never come undone. They've built a shrine. Not to Aphrodite, not to the old gods, but to her. Your statue, your miracle. They've called her the Flesh Walker now, not a name. A title. And the shrine, it's disgusting in its grandeur. A marble pedestal shaped like a womb. Drapes made from torn linen stolen from temples. Offerings piled high. Grapes, coins, incense. Even a ruby ring still warm from someone's finger. And at the center, a sculpture of her, but exaggerated, hips wider. Eyes closed. Lips parted as if whispering eternal secrets. You want to scream. You want to rip it all down. Instead, you stand frozen, staring at this warped vision of what you once loved. The crowd murmurs. Some pray. Some chant her name as if it's a spell. Others just watch, hungry-eyed, hoping for a miracle they don't deserve. And then someone spots you, points. That's the sculptor. They cry, the father of stone. You try to retreat, but it's too late. They swarm you not violently, but reverently. They want to touch your robe. Ask if she speak to them again. One woman presses her baby to your chest and begs you to bless it. You shove your way out, lungs burning. This isn't worship. It's consumption. It's myth turned currency. And you know exactly who's behind it. You find her on the cliffs above the city, watching the sea like it might answer her. She hears you before you speak. They're praying to you, you spit. They've built you into a temple. She doesn't turn around, just says, they were always going to. You demand, why didn't you stop them? She finally looks at you, her expression unreadable, her voice soft but sharp. Because they needed something to believe in. I gave them silence, and they filled it with themselves. You step closer, fury rising. They made you into a god. And she laughs. A low, tired sound. No, they made me into a story. That's different. You want to argue, too. Tell her that stories can become prisons. But then you realize so can love. So can statues. That night, the temple priestesses visit you again. This time with an offer. They want to commission you to carve a new version of her. Larger, grander. Something that will last beyond the memory of breath. You refuse, not politely, not diplomatically. You throw the scroll back at them and tell them they're vultures in silk. One priestess, older than the rest, narrows her eyes and says, she's already more than you ever made her. You should be grateful we remember you at all. And those words stick in your mind like thorns. You return to your studio, but the walls feel different now. Tighter, hotter. You touch your tools and feel no comfort. You look at the bust she returned and wonder if it too has stopped being yours. You carve anyway, desperately. Not her. Never her. You carve chaos storms, beasts, things that cannot be named. You begin a piece of a faceless figure, mouth open in a scream that never ends. You carve until your fingers bleed. Until your eyes blur. Until you forget where the chisel ends and your hand begins. And then, just before dawn, she returns. Number. Ceremony, no prelude. Just stands in your doorway, quiet. Watching, you don't speak. You can't. She walks to your newest sculpture, the screaming figure, and studies it. "Is this me?" she asks. You shake your head. "It's me." She nods once, solemn. "I thought so." Then she does something you don't expect. She picks up your chisel and begins carving beside you. Not instead of you, with you. Her. Rhythm different, softer, less about control, more about discovery. Together, you sculpt something strange and beautiful. A creature with too many arms and no eyes, holding a broken crown. When you finish, she whispers, "This is what love looks like." And for a moment, you almost believe her. But peace doesn't last. The temple raises a new tax, one required to sustain the light of the living sculpture. Citizens must donate food, coin, or time in her honor. Refuse, and you're barred from worship, from trade, from protection. A woman is beaten in the square for refusing to kneel. You rush to her aid. The guards threaten you. You scream her name in the crowd. This isn't what she wanted. And from the distance, you think you see her watching. No smile, no sorrow. Just eyes like open sky. You confront her again. Harder this time. Demand answers. Demand action. "They're using you to control people," you shout. "Is that what you were made for?" She looks tired, ancient. "I wasn't made for anything. I just am." You can't stand it. The ambiguity, the inaction. "Then stop them," you plead. "Say something, do something." She walks to you, puts her hand on your chest. "I am not your voice anymore." And those 7 words are the most terrifying gift she's ever given you. You watch her walk away. And something inside you breaks, not because she left, but because she's right. You don't speak for 3 days. Not out of drama or despair, but because there's nothing left to say that doesn't taste like ash. You move through your studio. Like a ghost, a man-shaped echo of something that once believed in beauty. The chisel grows heavy in your hand. The marble resists. The sketches don't make sense anymore. You try drawing her face from memory and realize you can't remember the curve of her nose. Not exactly. Not honestly. Every line feels like a lie told backward. And maybe that's the truth you've been avoiding all along. She was never yours. Not really. Not after the first breath. Maybe not even then. She was always a question wearing the costume of an answer. And you were just the vessel she used to step through the mirror. Then one morning, she speaks again. Not to you. To the city. She climbs the steps of the temple barefoot, unarmed, and addresses the crowd. No ceremony, no priestly fanfare. Just her, in a plain tunic, her hair braided with red thread. "I am not a god," she says. "I am not a blessing. I am not a punishment. I am only awake." Her voice carries across the marble like thunder. "Wrapped in silk. You made me divine so you wouldn't have to change. You worshipped me so you could ignore yourselves. But I cannot carry your stories anymore. I am carving my own." The crowd murmurs, uncertain whether to cheer or curse. A man throws a fruit. It misses. She doesn't flinch. She descends the steps and walks past them like water moving through reeds, unshaken, unfollowed. You're not there to see it. But you hear the story from a baker's son who sells you stale bread and insists she glowed as she spoke. Like her skin was moonlight, he says, eyes wide. You nod, and for once, don't correct him. Let them keep their version. Let them tell the tale in taverns, embroidered with exaggeration. You've learned that myths are like children, you can raise them, but you can't make them behave. Later that night, she comes to you. Quiet, as always. No knock, just presence. You don't look up from your carving. You know it's her. You can feel it in the way the air shifts thicker, but not heavy. Like the hush before rain. She sits across from you. Says nothing, watches. After a long time she speaks. I heard you've stopped drawing me. You nod. I don't remember your face. She smiles soft, almost sad. That means you're finally seeing me. You blink, confused. She continues. Before, you only saw your version of me. The one who smiled when you wanted her to. The one who loved you because you wrote it that way. You want to argue. To remind her of the nights you held her hand, the poems you whispered into her silence. But you don't, because she's right. You didn't love her. Not fully. You loved the echo of yourself reflected in marble. And now finally, that echo has stepped away. But still you feel the need to ask. One last time. Do you miss it? You whisper. The stillness? She doesn't answer right away. Just closes her eyes, breathes deeply. Then, sometimes, but only when the world feels too loud. When people want too much. You nod, so always. She laughs, and it's the real kind, the kind that stumbles out of the chest like a drunk climbing stairs. Yes, she says. Almost always. She doesn't stay long. Says she's leaving, heading east. There's a city near the river where they carve statues of their ancestors, she tells you. Some of them are starting to move. You ask if she's going to wake them. She shrugs. Maybe, or maybe I'll just listen. You don't ask her to stay. You don't offer to go with her. You just stand, walk to her, and place your hand gently over her heart. It beats steady. Firm, nothing divine about it. Just life, beautiful. Messy, impossible life. She kisses your cheek. Not out of romance, out of gratitude, out of recognition. Then she turns and walks into the dark without looking back. After she's gone, you don't return to the studio for weeks. You walk, miles, across hills and ruins, down forgotten roads where even the wind seems unsure of its direction. You meet a woman who paints using soil and blood. You meet a boy who sings to birds and swears they answer. You meet a blind potter who shapes vases with stories no one told him. And through them, you begin to see art not as control, but as conversation. A way of asking the world, do you feel this too? When you return, the studio is smaller than you remember. Dustier. The bust is still there watching. You carve. Again, slowly, not with certainty, but with listening. You let the stone tell you what it wants to be. Sometimes it's a lion. Sometimes a sleeping child. Sometimes just a shape that feels like breath made solid. People come to visit again. Not many, but a few. A wandering scholar who wants to know if the myth was true. A young sculptor who wants to learn how to give their statues teeth. An old woman who touches your latest work and weeps without knowing why. You welcome them. You don't tell them the story. You let them decide what they see. And then one evening, the sun turns everything gold, and you feel her. Not physically, but like a ripple in still water. Somewhere out there, she's still walking, still carving, still waking the world with her breath. And for the first time in years, you smile without ache. You wake to laughter light, sharp, rolling through the morning air, like wind chimes caught in a storm. But it's not human. Not entirely. It's the kind of sound that doesn't belong indoors, or even in this world. You stumble out of bed, heartbeat tight in your throat, and there, standing in the middle of your studio, is a child. Or no, not a child. Something smaller, yes, but older than you'll ever be. Their skin has a smooth alabaster sheen, like marble just beginning to forget it was stone. Their eyes, golden. Not like hers, not quite. These shimmer with something amused, like they already know the ending. And clutched in their hand, impossibly, is the same chisel she gave back to you, now wrapped in red silk, dripping faintly with some kind of oil that smells like myrrh and rust. You say nothing, you can't. Your body forgets language. The child walks past your unfinished sculptures, fingers grazing each one with delicate intent, and then finally turns to you and says, "She told me you'd be surprised." You blink. Who? The answer is obvious, but you ask anyway. The child grins, the first. The word drops like a stone into your gut. The first. Not your statue. Not your love. Not even your creation. Just first. As in there have been more. They sit down without permission, legs crossed like a priest in meditation, and begin to speak in a voice that is not just their own. At moments, you hear her. At others, someone else. Many someone else's. Their tone slips. In and out of dialects, ages, even species. Like a flute played by shifting winds. They tell you things you aren't ready to hear. About how the stone remembers every touch, every word whispered late at night, every tear fallen in silence. About how statues have always been ears to the sacred, vessels waiting for breath, not from gods, but from belief. You thought you made her, they say, not unkindly, but you only opened the door. She stepped through because she wanted to. You listen dazed. You ask questions, but most receive only smiles in response. When you ask the child where they came from, they touch your chest and say, here. When you ask how long they'll stay, they say, until the silence forgets me. You don't know what that means. You're not sure you want to. But as the sun reaches its peak, they stand, stretch, and press the chisel into your hand once more. She wanted you to know, they whisper. The story isn't over. It's just no longer yours alone. That night, you dream of her again. Not the way she was, but the way she could have been if she'd never been carved at all wild. Laughing barefoot in a field of broken statues, building something from scraps and clay. You see her hands covered in mud, not marble dust, and she's humming a lullaby in a language that hurts to hear. You wake with tears on your face and dirt on your palms. Rumors begin to trickle into the city like smoke. In a northern village, a hunter swears he saw a woman step out of a statue during a thunderstorm. In a coastal town, fishermen pull nets full of tiny figurines that sing when moonlight hits them. In the desert, a caravan finds an entire oasis, ringed with statues, each one different, each one weeping. And always they speak of eyes, amber or gold. Or sometimes, impossibly both. Historians still argue about this period, what they call the breathing age. Some dismiss the tales as collective hysteria brought on by famine, or too much incense. Others suggest it was a rebellion of meaning, that art itself rose up to reclaim its soul. A few radical scholars whisper that it was her traveling, planting seeds, waking echoes of herself across the known world. They debate endlessly, of course. That's what historians do. But none of them mention the child. None of them mention the way you still sometimes find your chisel moved, or the faint sound of footsteps in the studio when you're half asleep. You start receiving visitors again. Not patrons, pilgrims. They come from far away, carrying little, but stories. A woman who claims her grandmother was turned to stone by a broken heart. A boy who believes his twin lives inside a statue buried under his village. An old man who saw a statue cry blood during the solar eclipse. You don't promise them miracles. You don't pretend to understand. You just listen. And when they ask you what she was, you don't say lover or muse. You say, she was a beginning. And that, somehow, is enough. One evening, a man arrives carrying a bundle. Wrapped inside, a small statue, rough, unfinished. She told me you'd know what to do with it, he says. He doesn't give his name, he doesn't stay. The statue is odd, not beautiful, not polished, but there's something familiar in the way it leans, almost uncertain, as if unsure it deserves to stand. You place it on the windowsill facing the sunset, and you wait. Days pass. Nothing. Then, on the 7th day, the stone sighs, not a breath. Not quite. More like the settling of something long held tight. You sit beside it, watching, not touching. The sigh comes again. And you know, without proof, without logic, that somewhere out there, she's smiling. Not because you made it happen, but because you finally understand you don't have to. They begin to arrive under moonlight, always alone, always silent. Some bring small carvings wrapped in cloth faces half-formed, torsos with missing arms, creatures no one has a name for. Others come empty-handed, but their eyes tell you everything. They've seen something, felt something, and they no longer trust the world to remain still. You don't ask questions. You don't need to. There's a quiet rhythm now, a current. You've fallen into. You show them the tools. You watch their hands tremble. And sometimes, in the dead middle of a sentence, they stop, touch the marble, and whisper to it. You've stopped trying to make sense of it. There's nothing rational about a revolution made of breath and stone. Then one night, she comes back, but not as you remember her. She's changed. Taller maybe. Or perhaps just standing straighter. Her hair is threaded with dried seaweed, tiny bits of shell glinting like stardust. Her tunic is dark, almost black, and her feet are bare and caked in reddish clay. She doesn't speak at first. Just walks through the studio slowly, trailing her fingers across every surface, pausing to glance at each sculpture like she's remembering an old dream. When she finally turns to you, her eyes aren't amber anymore. They're storm cloud gray, flecked with something metallic. It's spreading, she says, and you know exactly what she means. You offer her a stool. She sits. The others, your pilgrims, your accidental disciples, watch from the shadows, unsure whether to bow or flee. She waves them off gently, says, "We're not starting a church." You chuckle. She looks at you. "I'm serious. This isn't faith, this is memory. You don't understand, not fully. But you nod." She tells you about a city in the West where statues have begun to speak without mouths, whispering songs that haven't been heard in centuries. She tells you about a child born from a sculpture's womb, half marble, half miracle. She says the world is waking up, and it's terrified. You ask what you're supposed to do. She smiles, a little sadly. "Keep carving." But not for them. Not for worship. Carve the questions, not the answers. You want to say more. You want to reach for her, to remind her of the night she first blinked, the silence between you that once felt holy. But you don't, because that version of her is gone, not lost, just grown. Like a fruit ripened, eaten and turned seed again. Later that night, she carves beside you, not with urgency, not with purpose, just for the feel of it. You work in tandem, like dancers in a forgotten ritual. The stone is soft, almost pliant. When dawn comes, you've made something neither of you recognizes. It has her hands in your eyes and no discernible gender. It leans forward slightly, like it's listening. Will it wake? You ask. She shrugs. Does it need to? And then she kisses your forehead, once, tenderly. "Goodbye," she says. You try to ask when she'll return, but the word catches in your throat. She's already gone. After that, the visitors multiply. Not just artists, not just believers. Children who dream in marble. Soldiers who claim to hear whispers in the hilt of their blades. A woman who says her lover turned to stone mid-embrace and left behind a statue that still weeps. You begin to understand this isn't a movement. It's a reawakening, something ancient, something buried. A pulse under the skin of time. One day, a scholar arrives. Hair wild, eyes bloodshot, robes torn at the hem. He doesn't speak at first. Just unrolls a parchment onto your floor, revealing a diagram, a map, maybe of statues across the continent. He points to each one, muttering dates, events, patterns. "She's not the first," he says. "She's the latest." You listen. He tells you about a Babylonian idol that once laughed in the presence of grief. A Mayan carving that bled when the stars aligned. A Greek kouros that disappeared during a solar eclipse and returned with a heartbeat. They've always tried, he says, voice cracking, to cross over, to speak, but we keep turning them into symbols. We keep missing the point. You ask him what the point is. He just looks at you and says, "We're the statues now." That night, you carve something. Blindfolded. You don't know why. You just wrap the cloth, pick up the chisel, and let your hands move. You feel the rhythm in your bones, a pulse that doesn't match your own. When you remove the blindfold, you've sculpted a face you've never seen, but it's crying. Not in grief, in relief. You place it on a shelf and say nothing, then one morning the child returns, older now, or maybe just taller. Their eyes are a different color. They sit beside you, silent, and offer you a small stone. Smooth, unmarked. It wants to be something, they say. You ask what? They grin. You decide. You hold it in your palm for a long time. It's warm, not hot, not glowing. Just gently warm, like skin near a fire. And in that moment, you realize it's not about what wakes. It's about what listens. And you are finally ready to listen. You dream of being buried alive, but not in dirt. Not in darkness, in marble, in smooth, cold stillness. It wraps around your limbs like fog made solid. You can't scream. You can't blink. You are the sculpture now. And from the outside, you hear voices. Dozens, maybe hundreds. They're admiring your form, praising your detail, arguing over what emotion you were meant to capture. But none of them ask if you're awake. None of them realize you're listening. You wake gasping, covered in sweat, your heart pounding with the dull ache of remembered stone. And you realize the nightmare wasn't just fear, it was memory. A memory that wasn't yours, or maybe it was, maybe hers, maybe someone else's, but it was true. As real as the breath in your lungs, and the terror that clung to you like ash. Didn't fade with daylight. That same morning, one of your newest visitors, a shy potter with stained hands and eyes too old for his face, shows you a figurine he sculpted 2 nights ago. It woke up, he says quietly, but it didn't move. You frown. Then how do you know it woke? He shrugs, because it was afraid. You examine it, a tiny woman with arms wrapped around her knees, eyes hollow and wide. Not beautiful, not perfect, but deeply, viscerally human. You touch it, and the pulse hits you like a wave of nausea. Fear, yes, but not just fear of waking. Fear of being seen, of being interpreted, misnamed, trapped in someone else's idea of what you should be. You stare at the potter. He's weeping, silently. I didn't mean to hurt her, he whispers. And for the first time, you understand that waking something isn't a gift, it's a responsibility. You return to your earliest pieces, not the famous ones, the forgotten ones, the awkward limbs, the too thick brows, the bodies whose proportions only made sense to your younger self. You line them up and whisper apologies. And some of them, only a few, respond. Not with words, not with breath, but with presence. Like ghosts who've chosen to stay because no one else remembered their names. You ask them what they want. They don't answer. They've waited too long to trust you. That night, your studio trembles. Not from wind, not from thunder. From something shifting beneath it. You rush outside and see cracks forming in the earth near the garden. Something pushes upward. You dig, hands raw, fingernails breaking. And then you see it, a face. A sculpture. Buried deep, eyes closed, mouth half open. You don't recognize it. It's not yours. But it feels familiar, like a sibling you never met. You free it carefully, clean it gently, and carry it inside. It doesn't wake, but it hums. A vibration just beneath the surface. A sound like grief being remembered. You begin to ask the harder questions. What if the first statue, the one you fell in love with, wasn't the beginning, but just another iteration? What if you didn't wake her? What if she was always moving, always waiting, and you were simply the vessel she used this time? And, more disturbingly, what if there are others like her? Half aware, trapped inside idealized forms, sculpted by people who never asked if beauty and consent were the same thing. You write letters, to temples, to artists, to scholars. You ask if any of their statues have changed, have shifted, have felt different in recent months. Most ignore you, a few mock you, but a handful reply. One letter from an island shrine claims their statue of Apollo turned its head during the thunderstorm. Another says a clay gorgon wept milk. But one response chills you. Our statue of Demeter vanished. Her pedestal is cracked. We hear footsteps at night. The olive trees keep dying. You return to the cliff where she once stood. You carve a figure, not her, not anyone. Just a faceless body kneeling in the grass, arms open. You don't try to wake it. You don't name it. You leave it behind and walk away, unsure whether it's an offering or a confession. And then the dreams begin. Again, but this time, you're not the one buried. You're the observer. A vast field stretches before you, filled with half-finished statues, all whispering, not to you, but to each other. Some are angry, some are lost. A few laugh. One shouts, "We are not symbols." Another replies, "We are the forgotten daughters of longing." You wake with their voices still echoing through your skull dot. In the days that follow, your carvings change. They're less precise, more instinctive. You start using your non-dominant hand. You blindfold yourself again. You sculpt not to control, but to find, to discover what the stone wants. And sometimes, when you finish a piece, you feel it exhale. Not every time, not often, but enough to know you're no longer alone in your own work. The others, your quiet followers, feel it too. They start carving things they don't remember choosing. One girl sculpts a hand reaching for something just out of frame. A blind man carves a series of teeth, each one with a different expression. One visitor who never speaks creates a full-length figure that has no head, but 4 arms and a single word carved into its chest. Why? You don't offer interpretation. You simply nod. You've learned that waking isn't about explanation. It's about acknowledgement. Then one evening, a new figure appears at your doorstep, tall, cloaked, genderless, skin the color of moonlit ash. They carry no tools, no luggage, just an aura of gravity that makes your bones ache. They don't ask to enter. They simply step over the threshold and walk directly to the pedestal where the humming statue sleeps. They touch its forehead, whisper something too quiet for you to hear, and the humming stops. They turn to you. "She sent me," they say. You ask, "Is she coming back?" They tilt their head. "She never left. She's just learning to listen in new places." You nod. Then, bravely, "What does she want me to do now?" The figure smiles, not warmly, not cruelly, but like someone who knows how stories end. She wants you to ask better questions. The wedding was never meant to be real. Not by tradition's standards. No temple sanctioned it. No priest blessed it. There was no guest list, no paper, no dowry. Just firelight, a half moon, and the smell of fig leaves burning under the stars. You remember the feel of her hand in yours, warm, calloused now, not the smooth porcelain of her first waking. She smiled, barely, and whispered, "If gods can marry mortals, then surely a statue can marry the man who stopped calling her his." You didn't know what to say, so you just said, "Yes." And she kissed your shoulder instead of your lips, because she claimed that's where the soul hides. It was not a quiet night. You've read about sacred weddings before the Hyros Gamos, the divine couplings where gods disguise themselves as mortals and rut in fields to bless the harvest. You've seen the faded frescoes, the looping limbs, the ecstatic eyes. But this was something else. This wasn't ceremony or cosmic roleplay. It was hunger. It was grief. It was two people, half people, really trying to anchor each other in a world that still didn't know how to speak their names aloud. You touched her like you were sculpting again, cautious and reverent, but she laughed at that. "I'm not your marble anymore," she murmured, flipping you onto your back with a strength you didn't think she still carried. You don't carve me, I choose to yield. The words didn't sting. They clarified. You remember later, lying there with her cheek pressed to your chest, both of you staring at the cracked ceiling of your studio. The fire had gone out. The wine was gone. There were fig seeds in your hair. She was tracing circles. On your stomach with a finger she'd once used to gouge a chisel out of the wall. Do you think we'll become myth? She asked. We already are, you replied. Too quickly, she snorted. No, I mean the kind they lie about. The kind where they forget the sharp parts and turn it all into metaphor. You were silent for a long time, probably, you said. Then let's leave a mark they can't smooth over, she said. And that was the last serious thing she said all night, because just after that, one of the studio's clay sculptures collapsed spontaneously, its torso sliding clean off like it had been waiting for dramatic timing. She howled with laughter. You remember thinking, this is the sound gods must envy. Historians still argue about the marble rites, that one mysterious ritual that appears only in 2 fractured papyrus records and 1 erotic wall painting buried under Pompeii's ashes. Some scholars claim it was a festival, others say it was a metaphor for sculptural discipline. But a few, always the fringe ones, the ones who smoke dried lavender and talk to their statues when they think no one's, look and believe it was real. That somewhere, in a time before time was measured in clean calendars, sculptors married their creations in secret. That those who did were cursed to always hear stone breathing. You'd laugh if it didn't sound so familiar. In the days after, she changed again. Not her body, her rhythm. She became quieter, more distant. Not cold but watchful. She would wake before you, walk the studio in slow loops, stopping to place a fingertip on each sculpture's chest. Still stone, she'd whisper. Still. Sleeping. You asked her once what she was looking for. She said, the ones who want to wake but don't know how. You asked if she could help them. She shook her head. No one wakes from the outside in. You taught me that, remember? You remembered. Then came the priestess. Not the ones from before. A new one. Younger. Stern-faced, sharp-tongued, dressed not in silk but in rough wool and gold thread. She brought no offerings, no olive oil, no wine. Just a message. The High Council requests her presence. Not yours. Hers. It was the first time anyone had formally addressed her as separate from you. As autonomous. You hated how proud it made you feel. The meeting was strange. She stood before a circle of holy people, scholars, poets, and liars dressed in ceremony. They asked her questions about miracles, about divinity, about resurrection. She gave them nothing. I am no oracle, she said. I am what happens when longing sharpens into form. They didn't like that. One priest accused her of sorcery. A philosopher called her a walking paradox. A drunk poet tried to marry her on the spot. She walked out halfway through a hymn and never looked back. That night, she danced. Not for you, for herself. You'd never seen her move that way, sharp angles, rolling hips, hands slicing the air like she was trying to carve something into the wind. She pulled you up, pressed your palms to her ribs and said, "This is mine now." You didn't ask what. You already knew. Her rhythm, her body, her being, and the city had thoughts. Some saw her as liberation made flesh. Others called her the false idol of a mad sculptor's fever dream. People came to touch her feet. Some came to threaten her. Once, someone threw blood at your door and carved a warning in pig bone. Stone should not speak. She laughed when she saw it. Jealousy looks like poetry when it's afraid, she said, and tossed the bone in the fire. You started carving again. But this time, you sculpted her, not as she was, but as she is. A version in motion. A version not looking at you. A version laughing. A version with cracks, with seams, with soft things growing out of hard lines. You didn't ask her to sit. You just watched her walk, stretch, pace, You chiseled like your hands were remembering instead of creating. And when it was done, she stood before it for a long time. "This one," she whispered. "This one breathes without me." And that's when she told you. She was leaving, not just for a walk, not for a day. She was going far east, she thought, or maybe inland, where the clay speaks louder than the stone. "There are others waking," she said. "I can feel them. And they're scared. Or angry, or hungry. You asked if she needed you. She kissed your hand. I needed you once. Then I needed to leave you, now. I need to be followed by no one." You let her go, but you never stop listening. You hear the funeral drums before. The screams. A low, rhythmic pounding rising like a heartbeat through the dust of the agora, shaking market stalls, rattling prayer bowls, sending doves flapping into the sky like terrified omens. At first, you think it's a parade. Then you see the faces. No one smiles. No one dances. They're not here for celebration. They're here for farewell. And at the center of the procession, held aloft on a wooden platform by 6 trembling men, is a body wrapped in linen and silence. It's not her, but it could have been. You catch a glimpse of the hand beneath the shroud, smooth, pale, unnaturally perfect. Stone skin pretending to be flesh one last time. You don't move. You don't breathe. Because in that single frozen moment, the impossible question carves itself into your chest like a chisel dipped in fire. Asterisk, do statues die? Asterisk, the body is burned by nightfall. A massive pyre at the edge of the city. They chant, they cry, they toss rosemary and salt into the flames. Some whisper that the fire spoke her name before it roared. Others claim the statue sat up in the middle of the blaze, reached toward the sky, and crumbled before the first star appeared. You don't attend. You watch from your rooftop, hidden in shadow, clutching your chisel like a relic. You're not sure whether you're grieving a stranger or a prophecy. All you know is that something has changed. Not in the world, in the weight of it. The air feels thicker. Time stretches longer between breaths. Every statue you pass on, the way home seems to lean a little more. As if listening, she doesn't return. Not that night, not the next, not the one after. You keep carving, but the stone fights you. It splits where it shouldn't, refuses polish. You catch yourself whispering to it, pleading. Nothing answers. You feel yourself slipping back into old habits, naming your pain, shaping your loneliness, hiding behind technique. But you can't escape the knowledge now. They are watching. The ones you woke. The ones she woke. The ones who woke on their own. And some of them are angry. A traveler arrives at your door, lips cracked, eyes sunken, robes scorched at the edges. He speaks of a temple far inland, newly built, richly funded, devoted not to gods, but to her. He says they've named her the Stone Bride, that pilgrims leave offerings of chalk and ivory and braided hair, that they burn incense made from crushed limestone and sing hymns written in fractured languages. He says the statues there are different. They move at night, they whisper. One bled ink from its mouth. Another crumbled into sand and reformed. In the shape of its worshipper, he doesn't ask for food. He doesn't wait for thanks. He just stares at the statue in your studio, the one you carved of her when she laughed, and says, "Tell her to stop." You don't sleep that night. You sit by candlelight, replaying every word, every glance, every dream she left behind. You remember her saying, "I wasn't made to be adored." But they adore her now. They kneel, they beg, they build. And with every prayer, the myth grows heavier. She's becoming something else, something larger, something uncontainable. Not a person, a force. And you know what happens to forces. They either shape the world or shatter it. You start noticing things, little things. Your tools go missing, then return sharper. A sculpture you left half finished now stands complete with an expression you didn't carve. The birds no longer nest on your roof. They circle watching. A child throws a pebble at your door and it bounces back midair, as if struck by unseen fingers. One night, you wake to find a figure at the edge of your bed. Not her, not anyone. Just eyes stone and gold and ancient. Watching. It doesn't speak. It doesn't move. It simply is. And then it's gone. You walk through the city and see signs of her everywhere. A woman with a birthmark shaped like a chisel wound. A man humming the lullaby she once sang in her sleep. A baker carving faces into loaves of bread faces that look back. You pass the old temple and see that her statue is gone, replaced by a basin of water that reflects only what you refuse to admit. And then, finally, she returns, not walking, not breathing, appearing. One blink and she's there, leaning against your doorway like she never left, hair wild, cloak damp with mourning. She doesn't smile. It's worse than I thought, she says. You nod, not asking what. She knows you know. You offer her wine, she accepts. You sit on the floor again, like you used to. She's heavier now, not in body, but in presence. Like every step she's taken has stitched another world to her shoulders. I tried to make them understand. She says, voice quiet. I told them I wasn't a god. You sip your wine. They heard God anyway, she sighs. Worship is a mirror. They don't want me. They want the version of themselves they see in me. You ask if she wants to stop it. She says, it's too late. The story's not mine anymore. You take her hand. It's warm, human, tired. Then what do we do? You ask. She looks around the studio, at your scattered tools, at the unfinished pieces, at the one that still breathes. And she says, we teach them to sculpt each other. You don't remember agreeing. There's no moment where she looks at you and says, let's begin. No solemn oath, no ritual fire. It just starts. One morning, your studio door is open, and people file in, not pilgrims this time, not gawkers, students. Some bring chisels. Others bring clay. A few just bring questions, their hands empty, but their eyes blazing. She stands in the center of the room, not teaching, not lecturing, just being. Moving slowly, tracing lines through dust, occasionally stopping to correct someone's grip or tilt their chin with one finger and say, you're not looking hard enough. And they listen. Because when she speaks, the silence after her words holds more than most people's whole sentences. You try to stay back. Let her lead, but she draws you in. Show them, she says one day, gesturing toward a block of untouched marble. Show them how you used to carve. The way she says it, it doesn't sting. It's not judgment, it's curiosity. She wants them to understand who you were before breath blurred the boundary between maker and made. So you do. You step forward, take the chisel, and let the rhythm carry you. You speak as you strike, not poetry, not instruction, just memory. I used to believe perfection meant control, you say. Now I think it means listening. The marble groans beneath your touch, and the students watch, wide-eyed, not at the form, but at the process. At the way your hand flinches when the chisel meets resistance, at how your breath slows to match the beat of creation. She watches too. And when it's done, she doesn't clap. She doesn't praise. She just places her hand on the sculpture's shoulder and says, this one's still asleep. But it's dreaming. That night, she tells you about the city she left, about the temple that grew too large, about the statue they built in her image 12 feet tall, mouth open, hands cupped like it was always begging or offering. No one could decide. They fed it, she says. Offerings, prayers, stories. And one day it stood up and walked into the sea. You ask what happened next. She shrugs. They built another. You don't laugh. Because it's not funny. It's inevitable. You talk about legacy. About what happens when art becomes religion. About how love, once sculpted, begins to fossilize. What we're doing now, she says, gesturing to the students, the scattered clay, the half-finished forms, isn't about waking statues anymore. It's about teaching people to sculpt without expecting obedience. You nod. You understand. You remember what it was like, that first night, whispering into marble and hoping for breath. It wasn't love. It was control disguised as loneliness. And now you're carving with your eyes open. There's one student who never speaks. A girl with ink-black hair and eyes that track everything like a hawk's. She doesn't carve faces, only hands. Hundreds of them. Large, small, clenched, reaching, broken. One day, you ask her why. She looks at you and says, because hands. Remember pain better than mouths. You say nothing after that. But you start watching your own hands differently. Another student brings you a statue they found in a river. It's barely a figure, more suggestion than shape, but it hums. Not like the others, this one trembles. It's afraid, the student says. You place your hand on its chest and feel it, a memory of drowning, of being seen too late, of breath stolen before it could form a name. You wrap it in linen and bury it in the studio floor. Not everything wants to wake, she says beside you. Some just want to be held one last time. One night you find her crying, not loud. Just quiet tears tracking down her cheeks as she stares at an unfinished sculpture. You ask what's wrong. She says, I carved this face in 3 different cities before I realized it was yours. You sit beside her. You don't speak. You don't comfort. You just let the silence stretch. Let the ache settle between you like shared breath. And in that stillness you realize love isn't always about possession. Sometimes it's just about witnessing. Visitors come and go. Stories bloom like moss across the city. Some claim you and she are founding a new religion. Others say you've opened a doorway into a world where statues remember their sculptors and sometimes resent them. A few believe she's not real at all, that she's a metaphor for artistic obsession, given shape by collective madness. You don't correct them. You let the myth ferment. Because the more they guess, the further they drift from the truth. And the truth is this. Asterisk, she never wanted to be worshipped, only heard. Asterisk, you start carving smaller things, spoon handles, prayer stones, figures with no faces but open palms. One student asks if you miss the grandeur, the miracle of waking marble. You tell them, no, I miss silence. But I think I'm making peace with noise. She leaves again. You knew she would. You don't cry this time. You don't wait by the door. She kisses your wrist and says, there's a mountain where the cliffs hum like statues do. I want to see if it's music or memory. You say, both. And she smiles. After she's gone, you find a carving she left behind, hidden beneath your workbench. It's not of you. Not exactly. It's of someone looking at a statue, but the statue is looking back. Not adoring, not grateful. Just curious. You understand the message. The story is still happening. And you're not the center of it anymore. But you never were. The first sign isn't thunder or a crack in the earth. It's laughter. Laughter so sharp it feels like glass in your ears, rising from the hills beyond the city like a challenge. You pause mid-stroke, chisel hovering over a bust you no longer recognize, and you know, she's come back. But she's not alone. You step outside, and the air tastes wrong like salt and copper and dust that remembers too much. By midday, the rumors begin. A figure seen on the road. Not her, someone else, taller, unsmiling, carrying a sack of broken faces tied with temple cords. A man saw him touch a statue in the marketplace. It turned its head toward him, opened its mouth, and screamed without sound. Another says a sculpture in the Garden of Prayers wept blood when he passed. One child, wide-eyed, whispers that the stranger kissed a statue of a sleeping woman, and she crumbled to ash with a smile on her face. You don't wait for confirmation. You know what this is. It's not an accident, not a myth. It's a reckoning. She arrives that evening. Silent, solemn, cloaked in dusk. She doesn't knock. She doesn't greet you. Just steps inside and places something on your table. A tooth, marble, perfectly shaped, stained red. He's undoing them, she says, voice hollow. The ones who were never meant to wake. You stare at the tooth. Is he a god? She interrupts. No, a sculptor, like you, like me, but different. You ask how. Her eyes darken. He wakes them to watch them break. He says it's mercy. That sleep is the true prison. That life short, burning, brutal is the only honest thing we can give them. You feel nausea rising. How many? You whisper. Too many, she says, and he's looking for me next. You remember the warning. The whisper on the one from that traveler. Tell her to stop, but she didn't. Couldn't. Because waking wasn't just a miracle, it was a movement. And now someone else has taken that movement and turned it into a weapon. You ask what she wants to do. Fight? Flee? Build? Burn? She closes her eyes and says, invite him. You think she's joking. But she's not. 3 nights later he arrives. Not through the city gates. Through the dreams of your apprentices. One girl wakes screaming. Clay fingerprints pressed into her collarbone. Another finds her sculpture melted, reshaped into a perfect replica of the man's face, blank, smooth. Beautiful. The youngest sees him standing in the garden, watching, whispering. You light every lamp in the studio. You don't sleep. You wait, Dot, and then he comes. He's not what you expected. No cape. No darkness, just quiet. Pale robes, bare feet. Eyes like empty wells. He walks into the room like he owns every shape in it. She stands beside you, doesn't flinch, doesn't move. Just breathes. He smiles. So this is where you've been hiding. She doesn't reply. He walks to one of the breathing statues and places a hand on its shoulder. It exhales sharply, like a soul escaping a cage. Then it slumps, still, cold, gone. You lunge forward, but she stops you. He's not killing them, she says. He's reminding them how to be quiet. He looks at you. You're the first, he says. The father of the blasphemy. You almost laugh. I was just lonely. He nods. And that's why it worked. Because you didn't want a god. You wanted company. He steps closer. But they're not company. They're questions. You woke questions that had no business being asked. She finally speaks. They deserve to be asked. He shakes his head. You say that now. Wait until they ask back. They argue like wind and water, no shouting, just 2 ancient currents colliding. You watch, helpless, your legacy unraveling in front of you. He wants silence. Not death, just silence. Peace through stillness, the safety of stone. She wants choice, voice, imperfection. Then he turns to you. Decide, he says. You started this. Will you end it? You don't answer. Instead, you pick up your chisel and carve. Not her. Not him. Yourself, as you are. Wrinkled, weary, worn. You carve your doubt, your regret, your awe. You carve the weight of being the first to love something impossible. When you finish, you place it between them. This is my answer, you say. He looks at it, nods, then leaves. She stays. For now, but everything has changed. It begins with a crack. Not a metaphor, not a dream. A literal, bone-deep crack, sharp and sudden, splitting through the air like a stream trapped in marble. You drop your chisel. The sound came from the center of the studio, from the statue, that statue. The one you carved in silence. The one neither of you ever touched again after he left. You approach it slowly. It hasn't moved. But the crack runs down its chest like a vein made of lightning. Raw and jagged and humming with heat. She steps beside you, stares at it for a long moment, then says, "It started." You ask what? Her eyes flick to the ceiling like she's listening to something only statues can hear. The war between silence and breath. You don't laugh, not anymore. Because you can feel it too. The city's rhythm has changed. People are speaking in whispers again. Not reverent whispers, afraid ones. A baker swears her ovens now go cold when she speaks the name of her late husband's statue. A child is found sleepwalking with clay caked under his fingernails, muttering numbers that don't add up. One man arrives weeping, his wife frozen. Mid-step in the town square, her skin graying, her pupils slowly turning to stone. "She was alive," he sobs. "She was." And then she looked at me and said, "Tell him I'm tired," and she froze. You begin to understand. This is no longer about you. It's not even about her. The waking spread too fast, too unevenly. Not every statue wanted life. Not every life wanted witness. And now the backlash isn't just philosophical, it's physical. Something in the very foundation of creation is rebelling, snapping like overworked joints. That night, one of your students disappears. The quiet one, the girl who sculpted only hands. Her cot untouched. Her latest piece, 12 hands reaching toward a face with no features, sits unfinished, dripping water from somewhere inside itself. You find a single word scratched into the studio wall, home. You don't know what it means. She stopped sleeping. Or maybe she never really did. But now she stays up with you, carving in silence, eyes dark, mouth drawn into a line of steady resolve. "We have to go," she says. You ask where. "To the city of masks," she replies. "It's where he went." You ask what she do. She looks at her hands, the same hands you once carved with trembling reverence, and she says, "Break." Something worth saving. You want to stop her. You don't. Instead, you pack your tools. You gather the students. Those who are still left. Those who haven't vanished or turned to stone in their sleep. You leave the studio behind, the way a snake sheds its skin, not with sorrow, but necessity. The city of masks isn't marked on maps. You find it by following the stories. The ones people whisper about, a place where statues walk openly, where sculptors are forbidden to speak aloud, where art is made in darkness and pain is currency. When you arrive, you think you've gone mad. The city is built in perfect symmetry. Every house identical. Every window the same. No color, no laughter. No sound, except for the slow tapping of chisels behind closed doors. No one looks at you. No one speaks. They wear masks of wood, stone, metal, even paper, each carved to show only one emotion. You see a man wearing a grin and weeping silently. A child in a mask of terror skipping rope. A woman in a blank slate mask pushing a cart of broken statues. Through the street, she doesn't flinch. Just keeps walking, straight toward the center of the city, where the temple sits. Not like any temple you've seen. No columns. No altar. Just a massive room, windowless, echoing with breath and dust and quiet sobbing. Inside, he waits. The other sculptor. The unmaker. His robes are stained with clay. His hands are bleeding. He holds a hammer now. Not a chisel. A hammer. "You came," he says. She nods. "To end it," she replies. "To free them," he says, "from your delusion." They circle each other like wolves in human skin. You don't interfere. You can't. This isn't your story anymore. This is hers. And his, and every statue caught between. The fight doesn't look like a fight. No fists, no shouting. Just carving. Side by side, opposite blocks of stone. He carves silence figures with no mouths, eyes sealed, arms missing. She carves breath figures in motion, weeping, laughing, breaking and reassembling. Every stroke echoes like thunder in the chamber. You watch as their sculptures begin to hum, to tremble, to wake. But this time, they're not passive. They move, they choose. Some reach for her, some for him. Some run, some shatter themselves against the walls. And then, one statue hers places a hand on one of his. Not in violence. In stillness, the unmaker pauses. His chisel slips. His statue collapses into dust. He looks at her. "You win," he says. She shakes her head. "No, we all lose. Unless we listen." And just like that, it's over. You return to a city that no longer remembers silence. Everything breathes now. Walls sigh in the sun. Statues blink as you pass. Even the stones underfoot seem to pulse faintly, like they're dreaming beneath your steps. The people aren't afraid anymore. Or maybe they're just too tired to be. There's a weariness in their joy, a kind of quiet pact that no one speaks aloud. We have survived a world that woke up too fast, and now we must teach it how to sleep again. You walk through the marketplace and see a sculpture small, crude, made of clay and feathers. It waves at you. No one else reacts. You wave back. It grins and crumbles into dust. Satisfied. Back at the studio, what's left of it, you find your chisel exactly where you left it, as if time didn't dare move it without your permission. But there's something else. A single mark on the wall you never carved, just a spiral, deep and uneven. You trace it with your finger, and it vibrates faintly, like a breath held too long. She's left you something. A message, maybe. Or a memory. The others return slowly, the students, the wanderers. Even the quiet girl with the hand statues, she walks in barefoot, a line of inked fingers up her arm, and says, "They told me to come back." You don't ask who. You don't have to. The air here feels like old stories cracking open. She doesn't come back with them. Not yet. You find yourself sculpting again. Not from loneliness. Not from devotion. From something else. You sculpt the unmaker not as he was, but as he could have been. A face that carries the weight of mercy and regret. You carve it slow, thoughtful. The students watch in silence. One of them asks, "Will it wake?" You smile. "No, but it might listen." Rumors trickle in. A statue in the mountains that paints its own eyes every morning. A group of children born with skin that smells faintly of clay and dreams only in color. A woman who weeps pearls, one for every story her grandmother forgot. You believe all of it. And then one night she returns, not dramatically, not with fanfare. She just walks into the studio like a song you forgot the melody to until you hear it again. She looks older now. Not in skin, in movement. Slower, intentional. Her eyes carry cities. "I've been building," she says. Not statues, places, safe ones. For those who don't want to be seen. For the ones who woke and wanted to go back. You ask if that's possible. She nods. Sleep isn't death. It's another kind of life. You sit together and talk. Not about gods. Not about myth. About small things. The sound the sky makes before it rains. How fig trees remember who planted them. Whether sculpting can ever be a form of apology. It can be, she says. If you carve what hurts, you look at your hands. They still tremble sometimes. You wonder if that's guilt or just age. There's one more statue. You both know it. Neither of you says it. It's the one you haven't dared to carve. The one you've avoided your entire life. The only figure missing from your gallery of ghosts. Yourself, not as you see you, but as you were seen. The flawed creator. The man who asked for love and carved obedience. The sculptor who mistook silence for safety, that you begin it at dawn. She doesn't help, she just watches. Not judging, witnessing. The first blow of the chisel echoes like a bell. You don't stop for food, for water, for anything. You carve until your body aches, until the lines blur, until the figure begins to emerge, not heroic, not idealized. Just true, tired eyes, soft shoulders, one hand open, one clenched. Lips parted like he's about to apologize or ask something. He no longer believes he deserves. When it's finished, she steps forward and places her hand on its chest. The statue breathes in and then stops. A single breath. Nothing more. That's all he needed. She says, "You don't cry. You just exhale dot, and in that moment, the chisel slips from your hand, not in surrender. In release dot, you finally understand what she meant all those years ago when she whispered, asterisk, I wasn't made to love you. I chose to learn. Asterisk, and maybe that's the point of all this. Not the miracle, not the myth, the learning. She touches your cheek. It's time. You ask where she's going. She says, nowhere, everywhere. Back into the story. You ask if she'll return. She says, you'll see me again. Every time someone sculpts without trying to be obeyed. And then she walks out of the studio. One last time. This time, you don't follow. You just listen. You live differently now. Not smaller, just quieter. As if your breath no longer needs to echo to be worth hearing. The studio is still here, still filled with dust and ghosts and shapes that half remember why they were made. You don't clean the dust anymore. You let it settle, let it speak. Visitors still come, but they don't ask for miracles. They ask for silence. They ask for permission to listen. You give it freely. Some stay for hours, staring at the statues like they're reading poems carved without words. Others sit beside you, hands folded, waiting for something neither of you can name. And when they leave, they always take a bit of stillness with them, like a whisper, tucked in their coat pocket. The students come and go. You don't call them that now, you just call them people, makers, wanderers. Some of them carve, others paint. A few just sit and watch the light move across the marble. And once in a while, one of them asks the question, did she love you? You never answer the same way twice. Sometimes you say yes. Sometimes you say, she didn't need to. Once you simply said, she breathed. That one made someone cry. You didn't ask why. You carve less now. But when you do, it's different. Not about shape, not about beauty. Just about asking. You carved a bowl once, not ornate, not even symmetrical, but people who held it said it felt warm. You made a doorframe for a widow's house, and she swears her dreams have softened since. You sculpted a single foot, cracked at the heel, and placed it outside your door. Someone left a cherry on it. Another person left a lock of hair. It's not worship. It's recognition. That's all you ever really wanted, you think. To be seen, not followed. Her statue still stands. Not the first one. That one faded long ago, somewhere in a storm or a fire or a night you forgot to remember. But this one, the one you carved after you stopped needing her to be perfect, remains. She doesn't move. She doesn't blink. But every so often, you walk past and feel a warmth brush your shoulder. You don't ask questions. You just nod and keep going. The city around you has changed. People speak more softly now. They leave. Small sculptures in alleyways. They talk about breath like it's sacred. They bury broken statues with ceremony. Some temples still stand, but most are quiet. One was turned into a school, another into a garden. You visit them sometimes. You don't speak. You just run your fingers across the stone and listen for the dreams still humming beneath the surface. Receive letters from far away. Some in languages you don't know. One came with a sprig of lavender pressed inside. Another had no writing at all, just a smudge of clay and the word thank carved into it, like the writer forgot there was supposed to be more. You keep them in a box beneath your bed. You read them when the air gets too still. Sometimes you still dream of her, not often, and not always kindly. Once she was chasing you through a hall of mirrors, each reflection a different version of her, some laughing, some weeping, some wrapped in vines or smoke. You woke up shaking. Another time, she sat beside you on a boat made of unfinished statues, drifting down a river that whispered your name. You asked her where you were going. She said, back to the beginning. You never reach the shore, but most nights she doesn't appear. And that's okay, because now you know she doesn't have to. She's in the way your hands hesitate before you strike the stone. In the way your voice softens when someone shows you their first sculpture. In the way you look at the moon not like it's a god, but like it's a witness dot. And then one day, a child comes to your door. He doesn't say much, just holds out a small lump of clay, already shaped into a figure with wings too big for its body. He asks if it's good. You look at it, smile, and say, "It's listening." The boy nods as if that's the answer he was hoping for. Before he leaves, he asks, "Do statues go to sleep when we forget them?" You pause. "Only if they want to," you say. He grins. "Then I'll remember mine forever." And just like that, he's gone. You sit down that evening with your tools. You don't intend to carve, just to hold them. Feel their weight. You run your thumb along the edge of your chisel, the one she once held, the one that hummed in your dreams. And you say softly, "I hope you're still breathing somewhere." A breeze stirs the dust. You take that as a yes. Now, breathe. Slow it down. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. There's no one watching. No one asking for anything. Just you, here, resting in the quiet echo of a story that refused to stay still. You've walked through marble corridors and dreams that whisper back. You've met gods carved from loneliness and love that doesn't follow the rules. And maybe, just maybe, you've realized that creation isn't about control. It's about offering, letting go, watching what you shape choose something new. And that's terrifying, isn't it? But it's also the most honest kind of magic. You don't have to be a sculptor to feel it. Every time you speak gently to someone who's been frozen by fear. Every time you look at a broken thing and imagine it whole again. Every time you choose not to demand love, but to witness it, you're already carving something worth waking. So let the story settle into your breath now. Let it curl at the edge of your sleep. You don't need to remember every word. Just remember the feeling, the hum beneath the marble, the first breath, the choice. You are not made of stone, but you are made of memory. And memory, like love, can move mountains if you listen closely enough. Good night, sculptor. Rest your hands. Let the dust fall gently. And if something stirs beside you in the dark, don't be afraid. It just means you're not alone anymore. End of script. Sweet dreams.